There are three things you never want to happen in life. Number one, you never want to go up to a woman and say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize you're expecting. When is the baby due?"
I'm not pregnant.
I'm not pregnant.
Yes, you only do that once in life. The second thing you don't want to have happen in life is if you are working with the boss and you go up to them and say, "You know what? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Because then the boss will say,
You're fired.
"You're fired." Yeah, so you only do that once too. And finally, the third thing you never want to have happen in your life is you don't want to go down in the basement and find a swimming pool, right? How many people have ever had their basement flood? Raise your hand. Boy, probably about half. Any more than once? Okay, Aaron. Okay, Aaron and Sue. 3 times? 4 times? 5 times? How many, Aaron? 7 times. Give her a hand. Yay, Aaron. Oh, you are the winner. I'm surprised Adam even hangs around you. You didn't sound like bad luck. Well, I had a friend of mine, in fact, Sue's sister called me a couple days ago and she said, "You know, Tom, I'm trying to get our basement dry. We have a problem down there and I'd like your advice." And so I thought, well, you know what, I'll take some pictures and I'll send them for you. And so instead of just doing that, I thought I'd make it into a regular speech, because sometime in your life you're going to have a basement that is dry, that's wet, and is flooded and is no much fun. So actually the title of the speech is basically how to keep your basement dry. This is my neighbor's house. This is how I sort of got into it. I got a nice house in Crestwood, but my neighbor's house right behind me has flooded twice. One time their sump pump died, their backup sump pump died. The other time there was a window down near the bottom of this house. The window got flooded in, so he got flooded out twice. My other neighbor on the other side has been flooded out twice. In both cases, their sump pump was off because of electrical problems. Their backup sump pump didn't work, so they got flooded twice. Now, this is my basement. There is no way I want my basement flooded. This is sort of my little exercise area. This is where my wife does her little art stuff. You know who did all that work, fixing it up? I did. My wife did, my son did, my brother did. This is a family affair. It cost us thousands of dollars, weeks and weeks of work, a lot of pain and suffering. There's no way I want my basement to flood and have to rip everything out and start over again. And actually, you see the windows up at the top right there? That's almost very close to ground level. So I've always been worried that those windows are going to lose or have water come in through them. So here's the first line of defense that most of us have, and that is the sump pump. Now, sump pumps are great. They bring the water out of the basement and they put it outside, but there's 2 problems. Number one is they're mechanical. So at some point, 5 years, 6, 7 years down the road, they're going to fail. They're going to stop. And you're probably not going to know if they are stopped until you go down to that basement and you have that scary moment. The other thing is, if you have an electrical storm and your electricity goes out, your sump pump is dead, and there's really not too much you can do about it. Now, one of the things that I do is I actually have a second sump pump exactly like the one I have in the basement. So if for some reason I catch it and I know my sump pump is dead, I could actually just take the new one out, take the old one out, put the new one in, and I'm good to go. So sump pumps have some problems. Now, a lot of people say, well, you know, I'll just put a battery backup sump pump down in the basement. That'll save me. Well, it might save you for 4 to 8 hours while it's still working, but when it stops, you know, your electricity is out, you can't recharge these things, and unless you have an endless source of batteries, that thing's going to fail also, and that's what happened to both of my neighbors. So what I've sort of come across is a new type of sump pump called a water-powered sump pump. This is on this old house, and basically you use the pressure of your house, of the water pressure, to go into the sump pump, and it actually draws water out of the sump pump. It's pretty interesting how it does that. I couldn't explain it. Probably Tom could explain it in the scientific terms, but I think it might have something to do with Bernoulli's principle and how they lift an airplane off the ground. So I actually took that video and watched it, and we put in a water-powered sump pump in my basement. Again, the nice thing about this is when I'm in France or I'm going to Germany or anywhere in the States, I don't have to worry about my electricity going off because the water pressure in my house will actually empty my sump pump. It's a pretty neat thing. Now, worst case scenario, if both of those fail, if for some reason it's a mechanical thing too and it rusts out or there's a problem there, I also have options 3 and 4. Option 3 is that little black hose back there that gets hooked up to the water again. If you have a water pressure, you could actually put that in your sump pump and that will suck out the water also. Now that's sort of a manual thing, you have to be there. And option number 4 is just a manual pump, sort of like a bicycle pump, but in this case it actually draws water out of the hole and puts it into a bucket or something like that. So that's worst case scenario. Hopefully that'll never happen. Now what you want to do, okay Judy, time out for you. One of the things you do want to do is, especially in the storage area, if you can, try to get your stuff off the floor. Try to get it, at least 3, 4, 5 inches off the floor. These are just little shelves I made out of 2x4s and some wood. And the other thing I recommend is plastic. I'm a big believer in plastic, and I think Sue learned the value of plastic when she had her last flood happen down in her basement. So buy all the plastic you can afford, put things in plastic containers so that even if there's a lot of water down in the basement, those things are not going to get wet. Also alarms. Alarms are a great thing. These are usually 9-volt battery alarms. I have them in about 3 or 4 different locations in my basement. They're pretty loud, so if the water does seep up, even if it's just a little drip of water, and this is actually close to my air conditioner where they have the water that's actually coming out of the air conditioner system, and if for some reason it overflows or something, that actually alerts me that there's a problem. These are pretty loud. You can probably hear these on the first floor. You can't hear them on the second floor. So if I'm sleeping upstairs, I have to go to another option, and that is this. It's a wireless system so that I can put this alarm down in the basement. It notifies me or sends up an alarm up on the second floor. So these are all things that I bought and put in. One of the things you also want to try to do is on your house, on the outside, try to slope all of your grass, all of your land away from the house. I had a friend of mine who had a little garden bed right up to the side of her house, and it was just like this. It was just flat, horizontal, and the water would come off the house, go right into this little garden thing. It was just like a little dam, and it was created, and she had all sorts of problems. So try as much as possible to slope your land away from the house. And for gutters, I recommend 3 things. Number 1, run the gutters away from the house. And I'm going to talk about this a little more later. Use a larger size gutter because there's different sizes, and keep the gutters clean. Now these are actually 2 examples of my neighbors. You can see in this one in the greenhouse, he's got gutters there, but they're actually just a few inches away from the house. My other neighbor has actually got the same situation, but he's got a big black plastic pipe that he runs 20 feet out away from the house. So this is a much better situation. So you're keeping that water as far away from the house as possible. Of course, when you talk about cleaning your gutters, you've probably seen a lot of people with trees and grass and all sorts of stuff in there. The gutters aren't of any use unless they're clean, so go ahead and pay some young guy to get up there and clean out your gutters once a year, especially out where Lolly lives. She's got probably 1 million leaves and stuff.
Oh, we have gutter guards.
Yeah. Oh, do you have gutter guards? Yeah, that's another option too. And so this is the front of my house. And so if you look at this particular house, a lot of the water in the front is actually coming down and hitting this front gutter right here, this one right here. And it used to be that all of this water would come down on the side and go back this way, and that's where I had all those windows. And so I've always been nervous about that, so I had actually replaced this gutter. I put in a larger gutter, and I had it go this way, sloping down, and it comes down on the side here and comes out to the front of my house. It's about 4 or 5 feet long, and that's where the land is sloping. So I'm draining all of the water in the front of my house away from my house. And that was about $500, but it was worth it. The other thing in the back, I got the same sort of deal. I've got the gutters coming down on the side of the roof here, and they're coming down across this little area and coming out actually around here. Again, trying to get that water away from your house as much as you can. The other thing you can do is actually dig a ditch. I think Sue's sister tried to dig a ditch around her house. Apparently they have like a whole community of houses that drains into their house, and she dug a ditch, and She said something about Ameren coming out and filling it in with an electrical line, so sometimes that doesn't work. If you look at this particular ditch in the back, you can see that there's like the little Mississippi River going through the backyard, and it really takes a lot of water. What my neighbor did was he actually took a little bobcat and he dug that little trench in the back where you see all of that water. So that's one way you can actually help to control the water problem. You can put in a swale. That's just like a little raised area here. It's sort of hard to see in this picture, but all of this area here is actually raised up, so all of the water that my neighbor's getting is going down this way and staying away from his house. Or you can put in a physical barrier. And again, this old house, the neighbor's water all came down to this woman's house, and so they actually put in a large 2x12 timber, and they actually sort of like a little dam, so the water physically could not get to her house. It would actually follow that and go down to the street. Drains. If you have a house and you have a lot of water, this is what my neighbor did. He put in a drain. So again, it's catching all of the water that's coming down to the house and taking it away where it should be. He even put a drain in his driveway too. Again, trying to capture some of the water that's coming toward his house and getting it away from the house. So here's my conclusion. A swimming pool like this is good. A swimming pool like this is bad. That's something you don't want. That's something you don't want. So please, hopefully, take my tips and advice to heart, and you will have a dry basement in the future.